Hi there, my name is Philip Eidson. I want to welcome you to the Art of Procurement podcast, the podcast that helps you, a forward-thinking procurement professional, position yourself and your team to proactively take advantage of the revolution that's taking place in procurement today. By interviewing industry trailblazers and sharing insights from our own experiences, my team and I pull back the curtain and shine a light on the strategies, tactics, and tools that procurement teams are using to elevate their impact. In today's podcast, I'm going to share with you a conversation from our recent AOP Digital Outcomes 2022 virtual event. And in this session, we discussed a number of disrupting imperatives that are impacting procurement, the procurement delivery model, and our ability to accelerate our impact. Facilitated by Helen Mackenzie, we were joined by Johann Raunig. Johann is a partner at McKinsey. He's undertaken a lot of work to identify these disrupting elements, and I first interviewed Johann for an event in Europe last year, so I was delighted that he accepted our invitation to join us at Digital Outcomes. So with that said, let's go straight into the session, and I'll hand over to Helen.
Now, Johann, let's get into some introductions. Your bio says that the main focus of your work is related to procurement transformation and programs covering initiatives which are delivering a quick impact. And that's great because that's our theme for today. It's all about speed. So what projects are you typically involved in?
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, and thank you for welcoming me here in this forum. I'm really looking forward to a great discussion regarding the project. What I'm doing, indeed, it's about impact, quick impact, but it's about impact in two folds. One fold for sure, as we are procurement professional, we always talk about savings and impact, what we generate for our companies. So definitely it's about savings and related to savings, other impact, but it's also building a organization, process, methodology, tools, which are helping to sustain this impact, so that it's not quick impact one time, but it's an impact which a procurement organization can sustain over the years to come based on tools, approaches, methodology, and experience we implement together with our clients.
Okay, so that sounds like some really interesting projects that you've got there. And that must give you an insight into disruption then. So let's start thinking about those disruptive imperatives for procurement. What can you tell us about what we could be facing?
Yes, I mean, before I go into detail on the disruptions, one general statement. I think procurement is on a pivotal point across industry, across companies. If you look on where do we stand, where is procurement standing? And this is for sure amplified now with the volatility, the inflation, and also the crisis what we have in Europe. Procurement is in a pivotal point to decide: do I want to go all in so that I can cover and can cope with these new challenges, the volatility, the inflation, and so on what I have, or do I want to not go all in and then go a second route, which means outsourcing and probably dialing down on the procurement. So I'm advocating for going all in, but this is a decision what each company needs to take. And all in means for me to attack the disruption, what we will discuss here, to double down on experience, to double down on people, to double down on tools, to double down on digital, and really set up a procurement organization who is capable of dealing with the challenges ahead of us on volatility, inflation, and so on, because it is needed to go beyond commercial levers now to drive impact. I know it was also in the past like this, that commercial levers were only one element of impact, but nowadays, in this world what we are living now, in this world where procurement is operating now, if you're not able to go beyond commercial, you have a miserable life. You are under pressure each year by the company to deliver savings, which you actually cannot, because you don't have the tools, methodology, process in place to deliver savings beyond commercial levers. And that's why I think it's on a pivotal point, and every company and every procurement department needs to decide, do I want to go down this route and address this or not? No, the other way is to say, I outsource part of my procurement organization. Let's take indirect spend at least, which are outsourced to professionals, which are able to double down on this. And then some parts which I cannot outsource, I probably give back to operation or business who take over. But I think that's a decision which needs to be taken. And I'm not saying it's because of the high inflation and crisis what we have now. It was, how should I say, it was building up this pressure. And now we are in a pivotal point where you need to address it.
I think so. And you find when you've done good category management for a number of years, the ability to find more savings, to wring more out of the suppliers, it becomes harder and harder, doesn't it? So, as you say, that becomes a very miserable life if all you're doing is focusing on that commercial side. So yes, let's have a think about disruption then, in terms of, okay, we've got this point of decision making. Are we going to go all in, or are we going to live the miserable life? So let's say we're going to go all in. Let's have a think about the disruption then. You've got some slides to share for us on that very topic. Let's have a look.
I hope you can see them now. Now I'm trying to guide you a little bit through the 10 dimensions. So I try to cluster them in 4 areas. No, there's this digital value capture on the left upper side. There's strategic drive and sustainability. There's organizational disruption and talent, basically the org and people side on the left side. If you talk about value capture, and I alluded to this a little bit, stepping up on tools, methodology, and process. And if I talk here on the first point, or if I see here on the first point around artificial intelligence, automation, digitalization, this is not the classic back office processes, admin processes in the back. This is really driving insights, driving savings generation for category managers, meaning at the end actually not only helping category managers, but even augmenting, or at the end probably even replacing category managers to some degree to really drive savings. So there's a new wave of digital which really goes into value generation, savings generation, and automatically proposing savings. A very big element and supporting the procurement organizations. The second one is around linked to the value generation, is that there's a shift from let's say classic category work to marketplaces. We foresee that in the next years 50% of the spend can be sourced totally automatically via e-marketplaces, which also would mean then that the people and the category manager and procurement professionals, part of them are shifting from a classic category manager to basically e-marketplace manager or operator, basically. The third element is very important on the value capture side, the disruption what we see on supplier collaboration. And supplier collaboration, if you look historically across industry, always happens and always is pulled when classic levers are exhausted, meaning that you have exhausted all the other levers with your supplier already. So you need a new wave of driving savings and impact. Secondly, also when you are trying to recover deteriorated supplier relationships or broken supplier relationship, and also develop basically secure and stable supply. And all these elements, they are currently in place also. And that's why people are going for these benefits and will have to go for the benefits of supplier collaboration, because it's supplier collaboration. It's not only about lower unit costs, it's not only about the total cost of ownership and let's say on the commercial side, but it's around improving quality, it's around security of supply, it's pushing innovation together, and for sure also then, and this brings me to the next point, pushing decarbonization. And this is also one of the elements I have on the left side. Sustainability, decarbonization is really now scope 3 coming into more focus, shaking up companies, not only in Europe, across the world. For sure there's a special push a special push in Europe with the EU regulations and the European Union taking a front runner in this development from the policy setting and regulations. But it's something which goes across the globe, and is something which procurement departments will have to cope with. And some of them are in the very early beginning, because they are basically trying to understand what is actually my baseline, what is the scope 3, what I actually emitting, what is my baseline, and how can I even start on to drive this topic. And for sure, this whole decarbonization, ESG, I'm talking about the decarbonization, but there is also other elements like circular economy and circular focused economy, which you have to take in account. This is basically the left side. I would like to spend also some time on the right side now, which is on organization and talent, which is a little bit supporting or following up on the left side. But what is very clear is that you will have to have a new set of people and organization in place to cope with this. No? And what we see is, or what we have seen actually in the past, there was this tearing down the silos between business operation and procurement and really working together in cross-functional team. The next step now, what is happening is really tearing down the category silos within procurement. Why is this happening? First of all, the talent challenge, because category managers, procurement professionals want an interesting job every day. And not only when there's a big RFQ happening or a big negotiation happening in their category, they want to have an interesting, challenging job every day, basically. And that's why dismantling the categories. And secondly, also for efficiency's reason, for workload management. As I said, in the past, when you had the category manager, he had big RFQs coming, RFPs to prepare, big negotiations to prepare, and probably setting up the new strategy for the next 2 years. And there was a little bit a phase where there was less interesting work and less workload also at the end. And with tearing down these categories, you basically have an agile pool across categories who are jumping in or who are professional and specialized on negotiations, on preparing e-auctions, for example, on being an analytical person and able to create spend transparency. So you have this agile pool, and when there is need in the category, they jump in and they're basically running from one exciting project to the next exciting project across category. For sure, I mean, I'm not saying we dismantled entire the category separate. You will always have some specialists, but let's say a big part of the workforce will be basically in this agile pools and not anymore in the
so you're suggesting that people will find the bits that they're good at and they'll sort of narrow into those lanes. Is that what you're suggesting? Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
And then probably two elements also on the org part, which I already talked a little bit about, augmenting, replacing category managers, is this human-less category management. What you see here, there will be, and there are already bots, tools, analytical approaches in place, which are not only helping and supporting category manager, but also part of their work replacing. And this can be fully controlled then in the future by bots. And this is also something where category manager and procurement professional needs to watch out. There will be a different, capability set needed from them to be able to cope with this new environment. And lastly, also is how do we manage people if you talk about organizational disruption? In the past, we were managing year-on-year savings. We will need to change to gap to best in class. And best in class means impact also beyond savings, impact beyond year-on-year savings, but going also in the other dimensions, what I have mentioned, especially on the supplier collaboration, innovation, quality, security of supply, and this across basically industries. Lastly, on the talent excellence, a follow-up of the disruptors, what we have talked before, no? Because if you see what is happening on how to capture value, how to drive sustainability, and how the new organization will look like, then you need different procurement resources. And we foresee at least 30% of the procurement resources will be totally different. They will focus on advanced analytics. You will have economists for game theory, IT specialists for e-tendering and bots, basically, which will work in this agile pool. So a disruption entirely in the procurement resources. And lastly here, but one of the most important points probably even to say is there will be the need to find a way how to train the people, no? And this has to go beyond classical training, as we already discovered together now. There are a lot of different dimensions and new challenges for procurement professionals. So there will be new methods to be found, and we are seeing here that teaming up in ecosystem with leading academic institution and so on to drive capability link is probably a way forward there, and will be a way forward to train procurement professionals. And even we as McKinsey, we have founded the Procurement Academy to exactly address all these disruptions and help procurement professionals on this way.
All right, so really getting on the front foot in terms of trying to be proactive about those skills and those capabilities that you see coming in the future. That's really interesting. Just to go back to the digital value creation theme that you talked about at the sort of top left of your eggs. Where are you seeing the greatest potential to speed things up? So our theme today is speed. Where are you seeing the disruption coming from that's really going to sort of give our processes a whoosh and getting them moving along a lot quicker than we do already?
Yeah, I think the main change is going away from optimizing and accelerating and bringing speed and efficiency in admin processes, in back office processes, in replacing admin capabilities, into really embracing tools which are helping in spotting and capturing value. And this brings another speed. No, this brings another speed in from identification towards implementation of savings. So totally another speed, much quicker, much accelerated timeline from basically understanding what is the category, understanding what's the demand, down till really bankable savings in your bank account. But it is also, on the other hand, something which will totally change the way how category managers work, no? Because they will need to embrace these tools. They will need to embrace these tools across categories, and they will have to be able to operate them and work with them. But I think this will be the main change on how we can get speed into our savings generation. And it's not only for one category, because you're that efficient with the tool that you can do also a wider, your scope gets wider. No? You can attack more spend in a shorter time, and the spend what you attack, you can attack in a shorter time frame. So you attack more, and this what you attack, it's even quicker. So I think that will be the main challenge. And companies are already starting to think about this. And as I said, coming back to the initial intro what I had, this can happen within a procurement department if you really believe you want to be a front runner and you want to stand out in procurement and you want to go on this road, or this could happen in specialized companies who take care of this for their clients. But there is no middle way. Also, there is no middle way for me in the current environment. You need to jump on this and do it right. Otherwise, it's, as I said, hard words, but I think it's a miserable life for a procurement organization to run every year after savings in volatility, price instability, security of supply, disruptions what we have, and you're running behind commercial savings, trying to squeeze out more and more from your supplier. It will not work. And it's currently starting not to work anymore and will not work at all in the future.
Yeah. We've got a question in the chat, Johann, from Antal, who's talking about a success story in the field of the humanless category management. Do you have an example you can share? If it's not necessarily, you can't name the company, but you could name the industry where somebody's gone all in and they've implemented the technology that we've got, and that sort of ended up with the process that you've talked about, with that speed and that contracting of the time between the procurement process and the savings in the bank.
Yeah. I think companies which do this successfully, and I've worked with, what they do is basically they start with this spend transparency angle, where you really understand what is my spend, and then make the link into automated savings generation. I think that's the first promising step, which is from a digital point of view and technology point of view easy to do, and also brings quick savings and quick success stories and use cases. So it's basically enabling your spend transparency solution, which is actually widely implemented across industries in procurement, but then do on top these automated bots which go into the spend transparency, understand easy use cases, understand identical parts, at which price did you bought them, and so on, and therefore create insights how to save and how to contract going forward. So I think the first step is spend transparency to identification of savings, because, as I said, technology is there already implemented in a lot of companies, and it is important to get early, quick use cases, because it's nothing worse than a procurement department or a procurement organization going to the board and saying, for the next 2-3 years, I will only take care of myself, my processes, my tools and approach. So you need the speed to implement something, because it is not working in nowadays world that you take 2-3 years out of a journey and say, I'm looking only internally in procurement and not looking on how and where I deliver value for the company.
Yeah. So from what I'm hearing then, is you're saying that you do the spend analytics, you find a good category to start with, that's where you go all in, and you can roll out from there. Does that involve the suppliers? You know, the end point of the process is, as Antal's saying in the chat, the invoice, the purchase order, that end. Does that mean that there's some supplier collaboration? So when you're picking your category to go all in on, you're thinking, where have we got suppliers that could be capable of stepping up and transforming at the same way we are? Is that a good place to think about as well?
It is a good place to think about as well, but I would go even further. Not only on the invoicing and the collaboration with the supplier on the back end, but even collaborating with the supplier on the demand understanding and saving generation. There are good tools and platforms in place how to collaborate with the supplier here, how to ideate together on savings. So there are good collaboration tools in place that you go on, let's say, on the value generating side, and not just on the let's say invoicing and process side.
Yeah. Okay. We've got a few more minutes before we have to wrap up. One of the things I wanted to talk about just a little bit was when we did the preparation call, you talked about automated marketplaces, and I was interested in, if you've got some examples of that aspect of it, and again, how people have approached putting these solutions in place, because obviously they're very quick. You're somebody out in the business, you need to buy something onto the marketplace, off it goes. So how have you approached that?
Yeah, let me probably one step back and try to craft a journey which can be successful in this tool and automation space, including marketplaces. I think 2-3 elements. Element number one is working with MVPs, use cases, and really trying to get early successes. And I have clients, by the way, which I started to work with, and they actually have done the last 2 years. They cleared out floors, hired digital people, put them on hoodies, and they were basically running around and trying to be digital. This is exactly the thing what you probably should not do. Is not that's the thing of I'm taking care of myself for the next 2-3 years. It's something where you need to be humble, nimble, and quick. So please don't misunderstand with being digital, being humble, being nimble and quick. With we changed totally our team out, and we are all different people now. So it's about getting use cases which work quickly, implement them, and drive them to value. And marketplace, coming back to your question, is something which is working quickly, which is something which can be set up quickly, which then drives use cases and early successes, which you can use also in your organization within procurement, but also in the wider organization across procurement as a proof of concept and a proof point for the impact what you can generate with it. And that's why I like these point-to-point solutions instead of creating an entirely whole ecosystem immediately out of nothing. So I think point-to-point solution, focusing on some areas, implementing use cases, driving quick impact, and building around this one as a 2-3 years transformation journey. Yeah. And speed. What I mean with speed is quick impact but not across everything, because this will not work.
Yeah, and so that's back to when we're thinking about impact, you've spoken already about getting those savings from the concept to the bank account, in terms of that being one of the impacts. You touched a little bit in your opening remarks about wider outcomes, like ESG, for instance. What are you seeing there? Is that more around the technology that focuses on our suppliers and being able to capture information about them? What are you seeing around that that's interesting in terms of speeding up how we can get that into the mix and start delivering on the outcomes there?
On ESG, there is, how should I say, the requirement of being quick is building up, and the requirements are building up, so there will be a need of being quick. What I see as a main lever there to drive quick impact is supplier collaboration. It's working together with them, working together with your suppliers, helping them on the journey, because the challenge, what I see at least with my clients, is even if procurement departments has a very ambitious target on ESG, and let's take decarbonization as an example, it is very hard to implement if the ecosystem and the supplier landscape is not ready for this. So that's why I see a tool for driving quick impact there is supplier collaboration, working with them, and it starts always with really understanding your baseline. No? And it is interesting to see, but probably also easy to explain because was not in focus, that that a lot of companies don't even know their baseline basically. So if you don't know their baseline, if you don't know where to attack, you actually cannot be quick on impact on ESG. So it's really understanding the baseline and then working together with your suppliers on this. I acknowledge that this is for sure a regional and industry specific or different, how should I say, priority topic and disruption, but it's something which definitely comes across industries now.
Mm-hmm. And that idea about baselining the data is something that we heard about yesterday when Kelly hosted a session with colleagues from Spend HQ that were talking about data around supplier diversity was the part of ESG that they were talking about, and getting that baseline established. Okay, we've got about 5 more minutes of chat. We've got another question in the chat about the use case for bots in the humanless category management. So I was seeing today on Twitter that there was an app you could get that would build a bot version of yourself, of me. So I thought, well, they'd just be going on about procurement all the time. What have you seen in terms of that sort of assisted buying and using bots to help with that side of things? Is that quite early on in technology, or is that something that you've seen working as part of this approach of building up a new way of doing things?
Yeah. I think it's in the early phases. I agree on this one. I think we also need to be humble on what we can expect and what can be a first step in doing this. But on the other hand, if you look on other use cases outside procurement, how quickly they took over, for example, HR onboarding. No, it's done now in big corporations only with bots. No, because it's a process which is easy to describe, easy to standardize, and with 2-3, let's say, decision question, easy to program. So I think, and if you would have told somebody 3-4 years ago, the onboarding process, onboarding I mean the technical onboarding process, no, in HR, like getting into the system, getting an ID card and so on, it's done in big corporations only with bots now. No? And this leads back to procurement. No? I mean, we are not expecting in the next 6 months that you will have a complicated direct category with a lot of technical specifications and big negotiations at the end with 4 or 5 suppliers done by a bot. No, we are not expecting this for the next 6 months. But tasks which I probably described before on understanding the spend, understanding where are the savings, connecting with the marketplace, automatically negotiating or driving e-auctions. These things are already in place now, and they're easy to implement from a technical perspective. I think there it's also the question, how do you do it? I see clients who are building up really digital competencies themselves, and they have Python and programmer and so on, which they do it in-house basically. And the other option is buying it from the market and leveraging what is out there. As I said, this is something where we need to start with the things we have in place, and I come back on the spend transparency because it's such an easy example. No, it's like if you look on the category manager day-to-day job, no, logging into the spend transparency solution, downloading a spend transparency Excel sheet about, I make it up, Valves, what they bought the last half a year, and the companies and prices related to this, putting it in a tool to understanding it, creating transparency on the prices, creating transparency on the delivery times, and so on and so on. This is still work which is done, and I'm leaning out a little bit now with the statement, but I think it's in a big part of companies, this is still really the task of category managers. And we are in a digital age now, and we have talked before about analytics and so on. So all these tasks are basically very easy to automate, very easy to hand over to a bot who can do this, and you basically have on a fingertip this transparency. That's what I'm saying. And then for sure there's the next link to come, how you automatically negotiate order and so on. But also this, if you separate and segregate the tasks, this is already in place at some clients of mine. And still have to say that in 80-90% probably it's still this manual task what I described.
Yeah. And often it's about, so we the questions in the chat that have come over from the Q&A are about category bots, and then there's another one from Kelly there about how do we decide. I mean, I've seen RPA done for tasks like you've talked about, where you go to a data source, you bring it down, you do something to it, you add something else, you can create some rules or some messaging around that then sends emails out or does whatever. So there is that technology. Do you think some of it's about the business case? Because certainly when I was looking at that, you needed quite a big volume or quite a few people that you didn't need anymore to justify the investment in the technology to make that happen. Do you think that there's still something about how much this technology costs to put in place yet, that we're not quite at the point where it's affordable for anybody but a huge multinational company?
I think the business case is a good remark what you made, but that's why I said I think the companies made the mistake that they thought they can change the world overnight, basically, by putting a lot of resources and time to it. So I think it is not around, as I said, changing out the whole floor of people and replacing them with digital people. It's around really defining what are my 2-3 use cases I want to show and where I see value immediately, and based on this build further. And then also the business case is something which is easier to bank because you have already success cases. Anyhow, and a bold statement, but anyhow, these cases are in the money quite quickly, and because you free up basically expensive human resources for more value-adding tasks. So these business cases are very quickly in the money and are very quickly positive.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we're nearly at the end, so I would like to ask you my final question, which is your quick tip. So at Art of Procurement, we're all about taking action. So if there's one thing that our session participants can do, Johann, going away from this session to, develop their approach to getting ready for that disruption and perhaps getting on the front foot, what would you recommend they do in terms of the next step when they finish watching Digital Outcomes and they get back to the office and they start thinking about this?
Think about the crossing where you are. Really think about this and think together with your organization, do we want to go the way on all in, or do we want to go the other way? I think that's a question which sounds easy to answer, but there are a lot of follow-up decisions which need to be taken when you do this on resources, on investment, and on people and so on. So I think this is for me the pivotal question, and there is no way out. And there are companies that were hiding from this question because procurement organizations were able to cover up for, let's say, too less investment, too less resources, too less focus on procurement. They were able to cover up and still deliver savings. But I'm saying this time is over. So I think this decision needs to be taken together with the company, basically, and the management team. Where do I want to go? And I think that's the real question, and that's the let's say the main question what procurement needs to answer.
So have a big think about whether you're all in or you're just going to keep sort of muddling along, and hopefully people will be all in, because certainly the future that you've described and all those different elements that are coming in terms of disruption to me sound extremely exciting in terms of where we're going as procurement people and the sorts of work that we're going to be doing in the future. So, it's not going to be looking at POs and seeing if they match and running around thinking about contracts anymore. It's going to be some really exciting work.
If this episode struck a chord with you, please do send it to somebody. We grow here at Art of Procurement through word of mouth, and that would be really appreciated. You can also support us by giving us a thumbs up, a star rating, or a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Since 2015, we've built the world's largest free resource for procurement professionals looking to elevate their impact. Our resources span podcasts like this, videos, blog posts, papers, and events. To join us on the inside and to ensure you never miss an episode, a webinar, an event, or a post, please do subscribe to our weekly newsletter, This Week in Procurement. You can do that at artofprocurement.com/subscribe. That's artofprocurement.com/subscribe. Thank you for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.